Xbox has not been having a great last couple of years. Deprioritization of console sales, marketing that cannibalizes their console sales entirely, increases in Game Pass prices, intentional loss of exclusive franchises, difficulty getting game developers to develop games for Xbox, partly because of a lower player base and because of inside competition from Game Pass, rumors about forced increases in game profit margins, suspicious early retirement of fan favorite head Phil Spencer, and in just the last couple of weeks, we've had rumors about Microsoft sunsetting the console entirely and the integration of new AI technology that most people were already worried about. Phew! Have I forgotten anything? Please tell me in the comments. Xbox is not just a console in peril, but an entire brand in peril. A brand likely worth over $55 billion. When your own brand is getting dogged on by the same people that were championing you just over a year or two ago, you know you're not doing well. But the question on the tip of my tongue is, how did a multi-trillion-dollar megacorporation collect this much bad PR when they definitely had the money to propel this brand to new heights? Some people may say that things all went downhill with the invention of the Kinect. Others will blame the poor launch of the Xbox One, or maybe it was the purchase of Activision Blizzard that got Microsoft's priorities all out of whack. My personal culprit is an old favorite that never fails to trip up companies, and that was forgetting who Xbox's real audience was. I'm not the first to say this, but the corporate graveyard is filled with companies who had a devoted fanbase eating from the palm of their hand, only to lose everything when they decided to chase a new market and leave their core fans behind. For Xbox, it was their vision of a new generation of gamers who would play video games anywhere, not the old generation who were still tied to a console. Who needs a console when you have the cloud? Kids are always playing Fortnite on their phones at school, right? Why not tap into that market? I can't say Xbox's Play Anywhere was a terrible idea, but complete shifts in marketing tone and objectives need to be handled with care when you have an audience of this size. That doesn't include insulting your fan base who purchased your product by telling other people they can play Xbox elsewhere without having to fork over the same $500 that you did. If that's who Xbox is shooting for, who exactly is this audience? Until recently, I thought that I was Xbox's perfect audience. You know, an early 30s man with disposable income who plays games every day, buys games frequently on their platform, pays for Game Pass, has a lot of actual friends within their ecosystem, and has been a fan of Xbox since the Christmas that I got my original console with Halo 2 and then almost passed out with excitement. The truth is that many people my age grew up with an Xbox or an Xbox 360. They treat that like the golden age of gaming and have the fondest memories of Halo nights with their friends or wacky Xbox Live arcade games during the Castle Crashers era. Now those gamers are older and have their own paychecks to spend. This fact correlates closely with studies showing that the average gamer age keeps going up. The most committed gamers are still those who grew up during this golden age. Those memories kept the Xbox brand alive even through the bad times, as many Xbox fans, like myself, are high on the hopium that Xbox's golden age could return. But that dream is slipping away, and many of us can see the signs that those days are long gone and will never be returning. From my perspective, Xbox has already burned the last shred of loyalty fans have held, and a mass exodus is on the horizon. Should I call it the Xboxodus? With everything that's been going on, including sweeping negative changes and a sour sentiment across the ecosystem, an internal management shakeup right now seems like the last nail in the coffin for Xbox. To be completely fair, though, Asha Sharma is only just now taking over the role, and we have yet to see her impact, and we cannot fault her for previous mismanagement. Perhaps a new perspective could be just what Xbox needs to refocus on its customers. Though I echo thoughts from across the community that someone who was previously heading up an AI product should be looked at with a hint of suspicion, especially because Xbox likely had many more gaming-focused directors that they could have promoted instead. This brings me to my intentionally controversial title, Xbox Winning the War. After all I've said up until this point, I know I must sound crazy for equating all of those Xbox failures with anything but a big fat L, and certainly not a win. But let me explain. While everyone has been talking about console wars since Nintendo fought Sega and eventually won, another more quiet war has been heating up over the past few years underneath most people's noses. That is the war for total gaming revenue, not just console sales. Imagine a world where selling a console no longer mattered because you own so many game companies that you'll earn more than your competitor even by selling directly on their console. And that's after you've paid their marketplace cut. I think that is the world that Xbox leadership has envisioned. And for all their previous myopia, this vision may be more clearly focused than many of Xbox's other ill-conceived ambitions. Let's break it down. More people are buying games than the consoles themselves. And after a 7 to 8 year console lifespan, gamers will likely spend several $1,000s on video games during that period, while only spending $500 on the console itself. And that's ignoring the rise in popularity of game subscription services. Game Pass Ultimate now costs $30 per month, which over the course of that same 7-year period would be worth a value of over $2,500 alone. That's 5 times the price of the console. Games have low to zero marginal costs in comparison to the costs of consoles that become more and more expensive for companies as the prices of critical components skyrocket. Current RAM shortages are a good example of hardware manufacturing bottlenecks all companies are facing right now. Lower costs means greater profit margins, which Xbox has already proven to care about greatly. Though you can't discount the ballooning budgets for game development, which lower the margins for games, of course. But in comparison to having to support a console over a longer time horizon, launching a non-live service game especially is closer to just watching it print money for however long people are interested. Game development seems like a simpler and less risky bet right now. Xbox may also have glanced behind the curtain already that more gamers are just moving to PC entirely, especially more die-hard gamers who actually prefer larger hardware. Xbox could profit not just from growing their existing PC gaming platform, but also secondarily from an increase in sales of Microsoft PCs. Microsoft is first and foremost a software company anyway, partnering with companies to make the computers that run it, therefore mitigating risk. It only seems reasonable that they would want to transition their gaming division to this software-first model as well. A similar business model that's killing it right now is Steam and their explosive revenue growth, recently achieving in the ballpark of 50% annual growth in a single year. Steam's success is partly due to their relatively unopposed dominance in the PC gaming space, with around 75% of market share, which is typically unheard of. In comparison to having to compete with two very popular console brands in Nintendo and PlayStation, Xbox executives may want to focus on competing exclusively with a single competitor who has benefited from a relatively blue ocean market up until now. Xbox is currently the only platform that straddles the line between console and PC gaming, and it may prove beneficial for them to focus on one instead of continuing to divide their attention. That's the motive for Xbox moving into becoming the powerhouse of game development and abandoning the console. But now we need the proof. Is $75 billion enough proof? For those who remember, that was the eye-watering amount of money spent to acquire Activision Blizzard King in a transaction that likely should have been struck down by the FTC, but went through anyway because monopolies are all the rage right now. While many people, including myself, believed that the complete ownership of the IP smorgasbord owned by this already giant publisher would lead to Xbox producing dozens of big-budget games, making them exclusive to Xbox, and then squeezing PlayStation out of the market. Starving them of games like Call of Duty would be a huge blow to PlayStation. What actually happened was the exact opposite. Not only did Xbox continue to release their newly owned IP across platforms, but this was the floodgate through which they started releasing all their other exclusive titles as well, like Forza, Gears of War, and now even Halo. What could have possibly been the rationale here? A small part of the matter was fulfilling a commitment to continue to bring Call of Duty to PlayStation just to smooth things over with the government so they would greenlight the acquisition in the first place. Maybe Xbox was also facing pressure from shareholders to start recouping the insane bill they had just incurred. But I believe a larger financial picture would show that Xbox believed that the game sales alone would profit them much more than they would get from a strategy focused on developing goodwill with their fans. That might have led to additional console sales and improving the comparative value of the console long term, but instead, Xbox is trying to control the gaming industry where it matters most. And to them, that is in the games themselves. Of course, this comes at a price. The potential abandonment of a platform that has meant so much to a lot of people over the years, which would come with a massive stain on the Xbox name and their subsidiaries like Activision and Bethesda. But there's a reason they might not care. Just like a mystery novel, when a new character appears out of nowhere to throw off your assumptions about what you thought you knew, this story has a secret challenger we haven't touched on much yet. It's not so much a secret as everyone and their mom has been talking about it for the past 2 years. You guessed it, it is AI. Whether AI is actually coming to ruin video games and creativity or put everybody on Earth out of work is a massive debate that I don't want to touch on here in this video. I would rather focus on a different role AI plays in the decision making at the highest levels of Microsoft. The funny thing about super mega corporations who have too many subsidiaries to keep track of is that Xbox's competition also comes from within Microsoft itself. Their CEO not only has to decide how to make and sell their products, but he also has to determine what they want to focus on. With most companies, that answer is clear. If I'm a vitamin company, my goal should be pretty obvious. Make better vitamins and sell more vitamins. Easy peasy. But Microsoft controls so much that there is the question of where to actually invest their capital. Controlling around 4 trillion in different assets has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. And this is where AI comes in. Microsoft is heavily investing in AI, believing that it is the largest business opportunity out of all of their offerings. This is a common theme among our largest corporations right now. The world's biggest, Nvidia, is heavily dependent on AI sector growth, and Meta's Mark Zuckerberg has repeatedly gone on record insinuating that whatever he invests in AI is likely to be an underinvestment because of how world-shattering the tech is going to be. Whatever your opinion about AI is, if companies believe that AI will change everything and give them a revenue growth rate far above their other operations, then they will feel pressured to divert capital away from everything else to feed their AI ambitions. There are massive first-mover advantages to the AI market, and the costs of many AI components are rising the longer companies wait to scale up. In Microsoft's case, Xbox is probably the first target in Satya Nadella's sights. I mentioned earlier that there was a rumor going around that Microsoft's CFO was putting a goal of 30% profit margins on their gaming division, when normal margins typically achieved by the rest of the industry come in at around 15%. What good would setting such unrealistic expectations do for a brand? Well, I think it would act as justification for sunsetting many things that Xbox fans love. Things that just can't hit those numbers. Fewer exclusives, less courting of publishers, console abandonment, more layoffs, etc. Anything in service of the AI arms race and its incomprehensible, yet still theorized, profit margins. In my mind, the only way Xbox could reach such profitability, especially with a console brand that is dragging their investments downward, is to cut off the dead weight and focus on whatever can be made quicker, extracted faster, and optimized for the highest margins. And if they use AI to cut even more corners there, that's what we call a synergy. Game development will likely stay, especially since they invested $75 billion in that direction just a few years ago. But that occurred right before everyone really ramped up on the AI hype train. So Microsoft execs and shareholders may want to see their money back from that investment as soon as humanly possible, for nothing else but more AI build-out. To get that money back, Xbox may have to break the rules of brand loyalty and squeeze their fan base dry, which is a possible reasoning behind some of the strange decisions we've seen come out of Xbox following the acquisition. The Series X generation certainly didn't hit the popularity highs of the 360 era, the only period where Xbox might have actually surpassed its main rival PlayStation. But I feel like this generation was actually still a fine time to be an Xbox fan. I absolutely loved the Halo Infinite campaign, and other exclusives like Gears 5 and Grounded were awesome additions that kept me excited for the future of Xbox. Even while outnumbered on the exclusives front by PlayStation and Nintendo, Xbox had carved out its own little niche communities that kept spirits and loyalty high. And then came Game Pass, commonly referred to as the best deal in gaming, a service unrivaled at the time by competitor offerings. Those things were goodwill for their customers, and companies who want to maintain or even grow a brand need to cultivate that goodwill if they want to remain competitive against others who are also fighting for customer mindshare. It's quite odd then that Xbox has recently used that goodwill as something to extract instead of build upon. Put dedicated exclusives that raise the inherent value of the console onto other systems for a quick buck. Increase the price of Game Pass not by a normal inflationary amount, but by a staggering 50%. Put an end to the best deal in gaming. Raise the prices of consoles so they will sell even less. There's less reason to build for a future of an already flailing brand when you can get more money now to invest in AI. What happened to the leadership I looked up to at Xbox? Hearing Phil Spencer in an interview try to explain why I shouldn't care about exclusives for the console that I already bought and committed to just about made me cry. It sounded like even his priorities had shifted away from his customers, or he was repeating someone else's talking points. I don't think it's a coincidence that his about face correlated with a surprise retirement. Maybe he could see where things were headed at Xbox and he had to find a way out to satisfy his own conscience. Sarah Bond was that plan until she wasn't. The sad part here is that Microsoft is likely to achieve their goals for Xbox and win by being extremely picky in their gaming prospects while the players are left with the scraps. There's a bit of trust you have to put in a gaming company to buy a console hoping that it will be supported for years, to buy games on that platform in hopes the shop will stay around long enough that your game library will still be downloadable. For the first time in my 20-plus years of fandom, I'm having difficulty putting that trust in Xbox today. Just the other day, the new Xbox head, Asha Sharma, teased a new console, codenamed Project Helix, that will be able to play PC games, like from Steam, in addition to an Xbox library. Despite Xbox already dipping their toes into the idea with their ROG Ally series of handhelds, I still think that this is a strange direction for Xbox to take. First, they'll be fighting off competition from a well-entrenched competitor now getting into the PC console scene with the Steam machine. Next, Xbox already makes full PCs in their Surface laptops and desktops, which are also seeing massive drops in revenue, just like the Xbox. So there's little validation in that market for a product like this. There may also be that awkward decision as to whether this console belongs in the living room with a controller or at the desk with a mouse and keyboard. Will people really appreciate a hybrid console when I believe that many people who are interested in PC gaming already have a PC and prefer to keep that separate from their console? Only time will tell. Since I myself already own a PC and would rather play Steam games there, this development doesn't interest me much. The only silver lining would be the ability to port my entire Xbox library over to my PC so that I would have an escape route if or when I want to switch to PC permanently. Knowing Xbox, however, I hate to admit that the more likely scenario would be a line of software exclusive to this new console, effectively holding my library worth thousands of dollars in games hostage unless I buy the new console. And let's not forget that teasing a console may be nothing more than Xbox's way to buy time with its audience. If players knew that Xbox was never going to make another console, many would likely want to pull the band-aid off now and switch to another platform where they could start building a new library, friends, achievements, etc. An announcement like this could further help them extract revenue before they pivot to game development exclusively. When all signs point to a new Xbox having lower returns, just like the Series X and S and the Xbox One before it, I remain eternally skeptical. After having dropped exclusives left and right and pricing me out of things I like, I can't imagine wanting to buy another Xbox, even if they do make one, unless it can really wow me, like making me a sandwich or cutting my hair while I play. Even if they release a new console, it will be very difficult to escape the reversed network effect spiral that they are orbiting right now. The fewer players that you have on a platform, the harder things get. Keeping up the Xbox store will cost more relative to sales. Multiplayer games will be harder to play on Xbox unless they're crossplay. And probably most importantly, third-party devs won't want to build for a console that will make them hundreds of sales as opposed to hundreds of thousands. And that's even when you include the Microsoft Store on PC in that. Once a few of these aspects start to take effect, more people will leave Xbox behind, increasing the reverse network effects and the downward spiral steepens. We haven't reached this point yet, but as this console generation comes to a close, Xbox as an ecosystem brand will be teetering on the brink of collapse. But whatever the future holds for Xbox and gaming, one thing's for sure: the grand narrative has shifted. It's not necessarily about which console is better than the other. The next generation of game companies won't even care about that. If they can squeeze their customers through higher price game sales, increased microtransactions in games, ads before game sessions, and constantly increasing subscription prices, then they'll do it all day. In fact, Xbox has already done all of these things. Customer loyalty is becoming a side quest for Xbox. It's no longer the main event. In this new reality, I can clearly see Xbox as the sure winner of the gaming wars if they force profit margins to hit 30% or be excised like a tumor. Sadly, the true definition of winning is increasing shareholder value as much as possible, and monopolies like Microsoft can do that even while its customers lose. Perhaps with all of the money they're raking in from AI, they'll just end up buying Sony entirely. The whole company is only worth about $50 billion more than the Activision acquisition was. You've probably got that change lying around in your sofa, right? Now I want to hear your thoughts. Where do you think Xbox and the larger gaming industry are headed? Are you more optimistic than me or similarly skeptical? Drop me a comment below, and as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.